All right. Welcome to Faithful Film Fanatic. Today we have a special guest on, Mike Regis, who's a director. Now, I've watched some of your films that you have directed, and you have a very unique directing style. And this film in itself was very unique. And I was kind of curious when you were watching this movie, were you looking at it from like a director's point of view or just watching it to talk about it?
That's a great question. I honestly, brother, I really just like to watch it to enjoy it. How about you, man?
I watched it to enjoy it. I was kind of interested in like if you were director of this movie, would you have done anything differently?
Well, that's a tall order, my man. Christopher Nolan's. I don't know what to say. I can't say I would have done anything differently, man, because I'm not there.
Right,
Christopher Nolan's the absolute
right.
man. How about you, though?
Well, the movie was really weird because it is so unusual, and it's like the reason I loved the movie was the same reason I was annoyed by the movie at the same time. It was kind of weird because every scene is like a cliffhanger, and that's what makes you want to keep watching it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I would say from my point of view, I really liked you know, and I want to get your opinion on this. When you set out to make a film, you set out to make a picture, you have to really just
Right.
ask yourself, what are you trying to say? And I think what he wanted to communicate was the feeling because it deals with a specific type of amnesia.
Right.
So in that film that we were watching, we are experiencing what the character is experiencing to a degree.
I liked how the movie kind of plays with the narration a little bit, and like how
Hmm.
it's because the main character has these memory problems, it's very unreliable in the narration. You can't
Hmm.
trust anything that you see.
Exactly. And that's so cool because normally when you're watching a film through the protagonist's eyes, you tend to believe everything they say,
Right.
and that's the way to connect and create trust with the audience. So once you find out that he was unreliable, it makes the film that much more intriguing.
Right. I got to ask you though. I felt like the only reason we watched the movie is because we have a character that we kind of sympathize for, even though he's done all these terrible things. We sympathize
Hmm.
for him, and if he was anybody else, we probably wouldn't really like him at all.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You're right. And how do you think we sympathize with him? Was it through the relationship with his wife or things of that
Well,
nature?
uh, his memory. It's like his
Hmm.
memory is his own worst enemy.
Absolutely. And also, how do you feel about the overall story, man?
It it was interesting how at the beginning of the film we are introduced to these characters, and we are told to basically told to have certain opinions of these characters, and we do, and then we're proven that we're wrong for having those opinions. So it was interesting how they played around with the characters, and you know it's one of those films that no matter how many times you watch it, you still have questions.
Mm. And that's also, and it also, good art sparks conversation too,
Right.
and that's what that's doing now. And how do you feel about the sort of approach and the visual style to help tell the story, man?
It was interesting. I haven't really seen a whole lot of people other than Quentin Tarantino kind of
Hmm.
approach a film with those visuals, and I actually
Hmm.
thought Nolan did a better job than Quentin Tarantino in that sense.
Really?
I feel like Quentin Tarantino is actually a little overrated. He makes good films, but I feel like people just overrate him a little bit.
Wow. My opinion, I'm a huge QT fan. Um, and no, this is great for us to have conversation. One thing I love about Tarantino is that every film is different, yet
Right.
feels the same. Like the
That's
music,
true.
the big bold letters, things of that nature. It it's really, you know, his interpretation of things. It's like I thought Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was awesome, man. How'd you feel about that movie?
I liked it. I thought it was a good film, and
Hmm.
I have nothing against Quentin Tarantino. I like him as a director. I think that Django is probably one of his better films, but
Hmm.
like Pulp Fiction is one of his most famous movies, and I love Pulp Fiction. But at the same time, it's kind of annoying because Pulp Fiction is only really as good as it is because of all the excellent dialogue. And I didn't like how in Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill and other stuff, he leaves out so much of the story for like your own interpretation. And it's nice, but at the same time, it gets you're watching a film for to see his interpretation, and I don't necessarily like having parts of the story not being told.
Interesting. Now, Pulp Fiction is such a great narrative because he really explored that nonlinear structure. Like, are you a fan of Stanley Kubrick?
I like The Shining. The Shining's probably the only thing I've seen by him.
So he did this film called The Killing, which is older, and he really employed that nonlinear structure in terms of telling a story. And I thought in Pulp Fiction, Tarantino really executed it brilliantly because I feel like that film is really about morality. It, you know?
Now that you said that, I think I might have to go watch that again and see if my opinion for it changes. But like, I know the one or two times I watched it, I didn't like how you never saw that boxing match with Bruce Willis. How you never saw
Mm,
that, but they talked about it, made references to it, but you never saw it.
that's interesting. So, did you like Reservoir Dogs?
I've only seen the film once, and it confused me. So I feel like I'd have to watch it a couple more times before I could give a really good opinion about it.
So, what movies do you like?
I uh, I actually like a lot of action and comedy, but the films I try to review films outside of my comfort zone, movies that
Mhm.
I ordinarily wouldn't watch. Like Memento wouldn't really be a movie I would ordinarily watch just because the plot of the movie sounds so simple and it sounds like every other movie, but it's really not. And so that made it really interesting.
Interesting. So, you, especially speaking of Memento, because it definitely is some material that, upon first, like you have to really pay attention.
Right.
But I think what Nolan did so well was he really got a fantastic performance out of. Sorry, I forget his name again. Guy
Guy
Pearce.
Pearce. Yeah.
Yeah, Guy Pearce. I think he got a fantastic performance out of Guy Pearce. Just very honest, like a very honest man. That's how do you feel about the performances?
It's actually funny because I, there's not been very many movies of Guy Pearce I've actually liked. And so seeing Guy Pearce in this movie and it completely different than
Mm-hmm.
his other movies, I liked it a lot more and I could see more talent in Guy Pearce and the way he acts and than I've seen his other movies that I've watched. And I don't know what about this character that Guy Pearce could relate to, but like I felt like he was perfect for the role, and he makes that character come alive.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I felt really elevated that material was the performances that Nolan could elicit out of his actors.
Right.
And he does such a terrific job with Leonard and the things that Leonard was going through. And then once you, because the acting was there and the overall narrative structure was there, and then the style was really peppered on it, with the black and
Right.
white, um, how they graded the film stock and things of that nature.
And I love the fact that the black and white stuff that's going on in black and white, you don't sure how it fits into the story because it feels so random, and you're still not understanding like what's going on, and so it just felt like I liked how it was chaotic, but not chaotic enough where it's overwhelming, just enough to kind of keep you interested to find out more.
Exactly. And I think that's the point of a great piece of film, a great piece of narrative, is that it needs to keep you intrigued. What is
And
intriguing
you,
about this piece?
all right, I was just gonna say that I it's hard nowadays to watch a movie that feels like the person that made the movie truly cares about the characters. It feels like most movies nowadays are just about what makes the most amount of money. And I felt like watching this movie, they spent so much time on the craft of the film and the characters, and it just everything about this movie just lined up pretty well, and I really appreciated that because that's hard to find nowadays.
That's a really, yeah, I can really see that. Sort of an enter, but also, brother, sorry, um, sorry about that. Also, it depends on what you're really looking for too. Like, have you heard of the show 000?
Have not.
So it's slower, but man, it's like an 8 hour like epic. You know, it feels like an 8 hour movie. And I definitely understand your perspective of it's more entertainment, and that movie kind of reminded you of the time was about the craft.
Right.
Have you seen Have you seen Rain Man?
I have. That's actually one of my favorite films.
Oh, wasn't it fantastic?
It was.
Or like a Goodwill Hunting.
That's another one of my favorite films. I love Robin Williams. I love his dramatic performances a lot.
You know what's crazy? Have you seen Judas and the Black Messiah?
Have I seen what?
Judas and the Black Messiah.
I have not.
Check that movie out if you can, man.
All right.
That's a good movie. That's a really, really good movie. But I think the early 2000s, I felt that it was really just like, let's tell a good story. You know what I mean? And movies definitely do that today. But I remember back then, it was just such a special piece, a special time in cinema, in my opinion, relative to my age. Like the Goodwill Hunting or the Rain Man is just like, it's just a good, simple story.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Older older movies have such a more unique style to them because I feel like people spent so much more time and craft on it. And then like today, nowadays, I feel like everything is made quickly to make
hmm
money.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that because of the streaming wars going on. Because
Yeah.
everybody's like there are 10 billion streaming services and stuff too. But you know, I think cream malls rise to the top, man. If you're really looking for something compelling, it'll be there. And especially with like nowadays, man, they're definitely like Searching's another great movie. It came out a couple years ago, and I thought that was fantastic.
It all took place on the internet. It was interesting.
Yeah, and that's a cool way to tell a story. So I would say now more than ever, I think style will set you apart, actually. And I think when people think style, they think just visual style. Like when somebody thinks style, they could say like, "Hey, look, Michael Bay has a lot of style because he does, right? Like cinematically, he has fantastic shot composition. Like I know a lot of people say what he has to say. I personally enjoy his movies because there's a good sense like he knows how to direct action very well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think that's super huge to really see. But I also feel that style can come through like I think a great sense of style for me is like the movie Searching. Like that's telling the thriller with a new style of webcams and social media.
Right.
So I want to get your opinion. Is how do you feel about style these days in film?
I I don't really from the films I have watched in the last few years, I've just kind of gotten tired of the style. Maybe I'm not watching the right ones, but it just feels like movies nowadays are just thrown together and made so lazy. And I feel like older films, I love watching 80s, 70s, 90s films, earlier 2000s, because it feels like people were still making films that had the passion for it. It wasn't really about anything other than telling a story. And nowadays, everything that's made by Disney or whatever is has some kind of political thing mixed into it. It's not just about entertaining you. It's not just about telling a story.
You're really echoing that it's more corporate filmmaking now.
That's what I feel like. Yeah.
Now, is this in reverence to the big blockbuster films, especially like the traditional popcorn?
I feel like older films, you go back and watch older films and you watch it, and no matter how many times you watch it, there's something new you get out of it. And I feel like people like Alfred Hitchcock and other people were a lot more creative in the way they approached a movie than lot of directors today. Not all the directors, but a lot of directors.
Interesting, interesting. That's such an interesting point of view. Um, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I definitely empathize and see where you're coming from. I also feel that we can also look at international cinema that's different because international cinema they really tell a story in an interesting way. Man, I forget. There's like Parasite's a great example. I think of something that's really different.
Right.
Also, Canadian film. I know some Canadian filmmakers because you're from America, right?
Yeah, I'm from America.
Where in America are you from?
I'm from Cabot, Arkansas, and I just moved recently to Eureka Springs, which is still in Arkansas.
Nice, man. I'm from Toronto. Um, so even some Canadian filmmakers. Like I know this one filmmaker that does. He even doesn't watch too many movies a year. Maybe like one, but his films are fantastic. So I think we're just at a point where we need to start bringing in a lot of new voices.
Right.
And I think if we really usher in a lot of new voices, we can really get some amazing, compelling stuff. Like, I'm super excited for female filmmakers. Like the people, like we really take it in. The representation of female directors is really low, and it sucks because at the end of the day, you ask yourself, "Oh, how come there are not too many new things?" But I'm like, you got to give people the chance. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
I'm super down to hear even like more diversity from other underrepresented communities because those stories need to be told.
Exactly.
And what I find so interesting and compelling is that especially these days, you really speak about things just being the same. Like, are you a big fan of Marvel?
I I was uh, up until I've liked Marvel all the way to Endgame, and then
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't really watched anything after Endgame. I kind of had some problems. Like Endgame's a good movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought Infinity War by far was the best Marvel movie that they've ever made, and I hated the fact that they made Endgame just to redo everything that Infinity War did. I wish I would like them a lot more if they just did not make Endgame and continue the story from Infinity War. I would find that more interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought Infinity War was fantastic, man. You know what Infinity War captured? I think it captured. It had such a great energy to it. The piece.
Mhm.
I thought it was paced really well. I thought the motivations were clear. Um, I thought it was a really good piece.
And the thing I loved the most about Infinity War was it was the first time for me personally to ever watch a superhero film where the superheroes lose. And
Interesting.
it made me so mad that Disney decided to make the next one undoing them losing so they won again
Mm-hmm.
instead of just leaving it at they lost and move on.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And so, does that echo your sentiment of wanting things to be different?
Yes, for sure. I whenever I have such a hard time finding movies I am crazy about because when I go into watching a movie, all I care about are the characters and good dialogue. If you can give me characters and the good dialogue, I'll watch anything. But I feel like a lot of stuff today isn't necessarily centered on the characters. I feel like a lot of times people are more focused on the story than they are the characters, and that's the reason why so many movies today are flops because you only have so many variations of how you can tell the story because eventually no matter how different your story is, someone wrote a story that is exactly like yours just under different circumstances. And so the only way to make a movie that's different is through the characters, and if you don't focus enough on the characters, then it's not different really that much.
That's very very interesting, man. To say it's true. It's true. But it's also a fine line because you can have a film that's very character based, but not no plot. You know, like
That's
have you seen like Nomadland?
I have not.
I haven't either. But
That's funny.
um,
I was
oh
not
my god.
expecting that.
Yeah. Uh, but from what I heard from somebody around me was that it's more of a character based film. It's more of a character, and I definitely will watch it too because I think Chloe Zhao is such a talented filmmaker. It's just like just want to make sure I could really focus on that, or hopefully if it gets like a theatrical, if they want to put it back in theaters again, I'd probably watch it then. But I think that's more example of a film that's just character based,
Right.
and there's not really any sort of plot. It's just sort of being. But I also
That's
personally feel like there should be a good fine balance of character driven stories, character driven stories, but also having a strong plot.
right.
You know, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it. I don't really know. I mean, you think about the films like Star Wars, and like even the film Memento. It's not really that strong of a plot, but yet they're so much better than most movies just because of the way of the characters and the way they go about writing it.
Interesting, and what you and that's such a great eye opener because compelling characters really bring the narrative alive. There's a good sense of attachment to compelling characters.
One of my favorite movies is that I can't remember if it's called the Sunset Limit or the Sunset Boulevard,
Hmm.
but the movie is just about two characters, and the entire movie is these two characters talking to each other, and it's Samuel L. Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones. And in this movie, Tommy Lee Jones is wanting to commit suicide, and Samuel Jackson is trying to talk him out of it. And so in this movie, you don't really have much of a story other than these two characters just being there in a moment talking to each other. But the dialogue and the setting in the apartment, it's written so well, and every little thing that happens is foreshadowing something else to happen of what they're talking about. And you care about these two characters so much, even though all it really is just them talking to each other.
That's interesting. Yeah, and just and it's so there's so much value just being simple, and not because it depends. Like everybody's different. Like Terrence Malick has a very strong visual style, or like a Ridley Scott, they have such a strong visual style. And that's what makes film interesting because it's what you individually bring to the table and your sort of flavor,
Right.
you know. And that's
Right.
what makes these films different. That's what makes them like very compelling. Like you say, you probably haven't seen Shang-Chi, have you? Haven't you? Yeah.
No, I haven't really stayed up to date with
Yeah.
any of the Marvel movies in a while.
Like Shang-Chi, I thought was fantastic. Have you seen Just Mercy or Short Term 12?
Have not.
So that director, he's really good. And what that director does is he does primarily, character based. I would say he's a very good storyteller, very good writer, and he knows how to pull such beautiful performances. But what's so interesting is he brought that same sensibility and heart to Shang-Chi because it had those elements, especially viewing his other work and being a fan of his other work. This one really did have the same types of human emotions, narrative prowess within the piece. And then what he's so cool about that set is that he hired like the guy Bill Pope who did The Matrix to be a cinematographer. So he
Right.
built a team around himself to really visually bring it to life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I.
So yeah, man,
Yeah.
it was good. It was a real good piece. But are you a big fan of Christopher Nolan's other work?
Um. I. I do love the Dark Knight trilogy. I think that those are like the best Batman movies out out live action Batman movies out there. I think he was perfect in how the actors he chose and how he went about doing things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I liked Inception. I felt like Inception was kind of like a movie of a throwback of classic films and older films of how older films mess with your mind a lot more than newer
Mm-hmm.
movies do. And I loved how Inception plays with your mind a little bit. And so I haven't really seen much more of his movies other than those, but from those I do like I do like him.
Yeah, Nolan's so good at that, and it's hard because when you're making films at that level to really maintain your voice.
Right.
And what Nolan's done so well, I feel, is that he's been able to maintain his voice in the films that he makes. Like he's, I know he has, I know he has roots in Chicago, so shooting some of Batman in Chicago, things of that nature. I think that's really compelling.
I was kind of curious as far as the characters in this film, Leonard, Sammy, Natalie, Teddy.
Yeah.
Did you the way Christopher Nolan goes about telling you about these characters? Did you like that? Did you like the characters in this film?
Yeah, I really like the characters. you know what it was? It's like there's so much value in just being normal, you know,
Right.
and not being excessive. And that's what I really liked about like Leonard, Natalie, and the other types, and Teddy as well. Is that these are just regular people, and that regularity really creates a lot of empathy with the audience because you can
Right.
identify with these characters. And Lenny coming across, I'm not sorry, not Lenny. Sorry, what's the dude's name again with the glasses? Not Leonard.
Uh, I
Teddy, my bad, Teddy.
Teddy. Okay, I
Teddy,
kept
sorry.
wanting to say Leonard, but yeah.
Lenny, Teddy. But Teddy just being that really nice, endearing guy,
Right.
and you see that in the earlier stages of his character. And as an audience, you're somewhat kind of, I wouldn't say fooled, but you're really enamored by how normal these characters are. And I think that's a mark of being a good actor, is when you can make things feel so natural.
Right.
How about you, man?
I liked the characters a lot. It was interesting how the way the characters are brought. You're always questioning their motives. You're always, and like for Natalie, for an example, no matter what she does, you trust her until a certain part of the film, and
Mm-hmm.
you are questioning everything Teddy does and his motives all the way
Mm-hmm.
until towards the end of the film. And so it was interesting about it going that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, you do question their motives, but I feel that with some of the other characters, you get to know them first. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I call it like kind of like dating your characters, where you're just getting to know them for, a significant part of the piece.
Right.
And then when they do something, you're like, whoa, like I didn't know this person will go there. I know what this person's capable of.
And that's another thing I liked so much about Christopher Nolan in this movie is I
Mm-hmm.
feel like most movies, the first thing they do is introduce you to character and then tell you the story. And during that time of you getting to know that character before the story really progresses,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really, it's just wasted screen time because all it really is just you getting to know the character, but everything else that's going on around him has nothing to do with the story. And yet Christopher Nolan is able to introduce you to these characters while telling you the
Mm-hmm.
story.
Absolutely, and that's really really cool. And you know, especially with his work, I feel like there's a sort of like a documentary sense to it.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
I could see that. I liked how almost every single scene of this movie
Mm-hmm.
felt like it could stand on its own and kind of made you want to. Yes, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And especially because he did a film called Following beforehand, and it was a really very very bare bones independent film, and it really employed that documentary style, and even seeing how he's utilized a lot of his filmmaking techniques from the doc side to this Memento piece, just the honesty, you know, the simple framing, things of that nature. I kind of felt it to me, it sort of feels like a documentary at times where you're just watching somebody live their life.
Right.
I thought that was like wickedly cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Um, there were a couple things though with the characters in this film that
Hmm.
I had trouble understanding. Like,
Hmm.
um, Sammy, for an example.
Hmm.
Sammy confused me so much. So maybe you understood this more than I did, but
Hmm.
is Sammy really Leonard? Because you find out later towards the film that Sammy's wife was really Leonard's wife. And so I kept asking myself, Leonard kept comparing himself to Sammy, and Sammy.
Mm.
So was Sammy really Leonard? Are they the same person or no?
Oh man, with Sammy Leonard. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, you're watching these flashbacks of
Hmm.
Sammy's wife, and Sammy's wife keeps coming to Leonard of trying to come to have understanding, but then you find out her that Sammy's wife is really Leonard's wife, and
Hmm.
so it kind of makes you think that maybe Sammy is Leonard
Hmm.
because
Because, oh, sorry, you're saying?
just because are they are so much alike in so many ways.
Yeah, exactly, brother. But I do have to head off right now, so I have to just hop
Okay.
into another meeting, man. But thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for coming on. Real quick, do you think that Sammy and Leonard were the same person or no?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Hope
Because
you have a. Oh, sorry.
because Sammy, because I remember at the end, Teddy was like, you're the one that did this, right? Yours, because he's going on. If to my recollection, he's going on the hunt for Sammy, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think he was, because I think he lied to himself the whole time. Because I think he did it, but I think he just didn't really want to accept it. And also, he had, he was going through what he was going through at the time. So I definitely do think Sammy and Leonard were the same person, and I think Leonard did, do what he did to the wife, but he thinks it's this guy named Sammy. So
Okay.
yes, brother. But amazing chat, man. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you on. We got to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, hit me up anytime, man.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that was a wonderful guest of Mike Regis. Uh, I love talking to him. Uh, if you guys are interested to make sure you check out his movies, follow him on Instagram. I'll have the hit him. I'll have his link to follow his Instagram account in the description of the video below. Now, real quick before I close off this episode, I'd like you guys to comment your thoughts on the film Memento. I'd like you guys to answer the question: was this film made with passion? I felt like it was. And from way I was talking with Mike Regis, I felt like he thought the same way. And this film was very interesting in how unique it was. And I feel like Christopher Nolan's goals were very obvious. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a blessed day. God bless you all.